and welcome to the Mindset Michele TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us for yet another incredible episode with, I can't believe, I'm so in awe of today's guest, but this extra special lady that's joining us today is the fabulous Jules Brooke. Hello, Jules.
Hello, Michele. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
I can't believe that we've been in each other's orbits and known each other. I think it's about at least 1,000 people in common that we know through social media. And we finally came the other day to chatting, and I can tell you it was like that favourite ice cream that you leave till the end or close to the end. And Jules has been one of those amazing people to come across. And for those of you that aren't aware of who she is and what she does, she started off with many businesses ago, but more recently with Handle Your Own PR, which was a business around doing your own PR and giving people the tools and the different things that they may need to do that. And in recent years, in her COVID part of story, starting a business called She's the Boss. And again, not just starting a business, but a podcast or this or that, all the different elements that just the amazing Jules has done. But I would, rather than me talk about this incredible entrepreneur, successful, all-round brilliant human being, Jules, please explain to people how you came to be doing so many wonderful things and what is it that keeps you passionate about what you do?
Wow, thank you for that very lovely introduction. You're way too kind, so thank you, Michele. Excuse me, sorry, I got a bit of a frog in my throat. I am one of those people who can't sit still, as you probably have known. Well, in fact, that's a lie because I'm super lazy as well. I am somebody whose brain doesn't ever sit still. And so when I start something, I tend to jump in, boots and all. I started She's the Boss group at the beginning of 2020, really the end of 2019. And I started it because I felt that I had the opportunity to have a show on Ticker TV, Ticker TV is a streaming TV network that was set up only at the end of 2019. And I had the opportunity to have my own show. And I said I wanted to be a show about women in business. And then from that, I then started a podcast. Then I finished with Ticker and started a YouTube channel, then a membership group. Then I've started all sorts of live events once we came out of the lockdown, as well as online events. I started doing online lunches for female founders every Friday, and I did that for 2 years. Now I do it every second Friday, and I love that because it's so inclusive. I've started an international networking group, which I called She's Connected Globally, where we start networking with people in America, and I'll be doing that with people in India and England a bit later. And we have literally just launched a magazine called Maggie, short for magazine. And Maggie Magazine is for female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business, and it will showcase a lot of those women. And then we'll be including a lot of articles and tips and advice and features about people.
Wow, and just that you weren't kidding about your brain never stopping. And I was just again going through the list of things there.
I know,
all of the many different things. But Jules, were you always, in school, did you decide to do one thing and set up a little school empire and throughout your earlier years?
No,
I didn't. A little bit about that.
I actually thought my dad's a doctor, my mum was a physio, and they very much wanted me to have a job where I'd get a gold watch after 20 years or whatever. That was definitely what they wanted. But I started in the media. I always thought I'd be employed. So I started in the media. I worked for the Herald Sun newspaper for a while. And then when I was I think I was about 23, and I'll say I'm 56 now, so it's a long time ago. I started a small business, which was a graphic design business with a couple of designers. So I did that. I think that was at about 23, and I've never really worked for anyone since. I've done stints of it. But so I didn't, at school, I was pretty normal. I loved school, and I was, hanging around. I was in a very small school. in Berwick, which is in the outskirts of Melbourne. And in those days, Berwick was a tiny little town. Now it's like rolling hills of estates. But it was a tiny little bush town, and I just loved school. So school was easy. Then I left, worked for probably 4 years, 5 years, and then I started a graphic design business. And from there, I then sold that, went overseas, worked as a freelancer for a long time, then did Sydney, then did Melbourne, then started my PR agency, and it's just kind of gone on from then. So you're kind of almost right, as in starting an empire, but I probably started a little bit later, maybe at 24, 23, 24.
Wow, and I knew that there was something there, even if it wasn't quite back at school. But yeah, I'm guessing that starting the graphic design business and learning about having a business, working with other people, all of those skills that you so beautifully and so magically have years later. Because I guess as I was listening to you rattling off, I did this, and this from the Ticker TV. One of the things when I'm speaking to people like yourself is that you make everything seem so easy, and it goes back to when you were 23, 24, starting out and beginning to develop some of those skills and habits that mean that now at this wonderful young age that you're at, it's quite easy to go, oh, I was on this Ticker TV and then I wanted my own show, so they gave me my own show, and then I did this and I did that. So I just thought I'd unpack it a little bit more for people.
Sure.
It wasn't you finished Ticker TV and went, oh, I'll do this. It was that you actually had understood some of the elements to build and develop to start creating this global empire to the International She's Connected group.
Yes.
But
I think, and we're going to touch on this, I think, a bit later when we talk around mindset, but a big part of what I know is that I love to see opportunities when they come my way and jump on them. And I now get it that I always say yes to everything. I can always say no later, but I will always say yes to everything, because you never know where an opportunity might lead. And what was initially going to be an interview on someone else's show ended up with him asking me if I would co-host a lunchtime show with him, and then would I like to have my own show, and so on and so forth. And then as that relationship sort of changed and morphed, I realized that I could do a lot of what I'd learned myself.
And that's what I love. It's that saying yes to everything. But let's perhaps start with some of the fundamentals then, where
Sure.
if I was to say to you, given this success, the travel, the different businesses, if I was to say to you at this point in time, what does success now mean to you?
I would say it hasn't really, well, I was going to say it hasn't really changed a lot. It probably changed when I had kids, which was 20 years ago now. But I wrote myself a little list of things so that I wouldn't forget them. And I could look at them now and go, really, it's about a happy home life. For me, I've got 3 boys and a dog and a boyfriend, and they're all lots of men around me. So keeping everyone happy, and that, as any parent knows, is like trying to, herd a bunch of cats or something. I can't remember what the expression is, but anyway, it's up and down. It's not always perfect, but a happy home life and having the flexibility to do what I want is really important to me. And I think that that's kind of how I would define success. Doing what I love, like bouncing out of bed, knowing that even though there's a risk attached to it, that I do things by myself, but I then bounce out of bed every morning because I love what I do and I can't wait to get started with the day. One of the things that I also absolutely adore, and really having kids has kind of put the dampeners on that for me for the last 20 years, but I'm about to be free of that, and so watch this space, is travel. I just love travel. I've been traveling a lot in my life, and really the last 20 years, all my money and my focus has had to be on getting 3 little boys through school. And so when that finishes, and my twins are doing year 12 this year, I intend to do a bit more travel. And I guess also success means to me having enough profile to be offered opportunities. So I do realize that people need to know you exist in order for them to offer things to you. And so I'm on a bit of a mission this year to help a whole lot of women build a bit of profile. But I think profile and influence gives you the power to make change happen. And I guess that's another thing that makes me very happy and also implies success to me.
Wow. And again, I feel like I've walked into a candy store and there's so much candy around success and opportunities and saying yes to things, and that whole recognizing that at the stage, and this is a really good thing that you've brought up about the stage of life that you're at, success was very tied to the family and to successfully raising the children and having them go through school and keeping that happy, secure, safe and secure home life for them. And that you're entering into a different age soon, not quite yet, but a different era, I want to say, rather than age, a different era, where the flexibility like you would have had when you were the 23-year-old overseas, having that flexibility around travel and different life choices because your circumstances, your family environment would change, and everything else that you know, doing what you want and loving what you do, all of those brilliant things that aren't, in a sense, they're not, it's not that they're not there when you're doing family years, but they're just more limited in some ways, and you have different options. But as those family years start to shift and children become young adults, then yes, you have more flexibility. And I love that image of you bouncing out of bed every day. I can just see it.
It's true. I also should say, when we're talking about stages of life, that my early 20s were in the 80s. And boy, oh boy, did I embrace the 80s. The big shoulder pads, the big hair. And I worked in media and we sold advertising. And for anyone that doesn't know Melbourne, I worked all around Chapel Street and Toorak Road and South Yarra. And in those days, we were invited to the opening of an envelope, as they say. And let me tell you, there were so many shops and stores and amazing businesses opening, and they all would have big champagne gala launches. And so really my 20s was a lot of that. So there was a lot of going to the opening of businesses. And I don't know whether that rubbed off on me as well, but in those days, I do remember having a bit of a pinch me moment in my early 20s in my shoulder padded suit when I think I was heading off to another launch on Toorak Road, thinking, this is the life, really. This is what I've always wanted. This is this great life where I get to put on suits and go out and hang out with amazing people. So there've been sort of lots of different stages in my life.
Wow. And unfortunately, we have to move on, but otherwise I'd love to keep going on with, tell me more about the shoulder pads and
the power suits.
The power suits, yes. I was very like, you'll know who I'm talking about, Woolmark. So I got some woolen power suits from Woolmark at one point, which are actually the most beautiful tailored suits I've ever had. But enough about my powered suits and tailored suits. Jules, if you were to share some gems and some tips with people, because you've lived such a vivacious and successful life, and it just comes across of, you know, that powerful energy and that joy and how much you've also helped others throughout all of those years. But people watching, you know, there'll be at all sorts of different stages of success and journeys, and especially in recent years, as we know, people are finding things at times a little bit more overwhelming and stressful. What sorts of suggestions do you have for how somebody watching you going, I want to drink that Kool-Aid, I want to be more like Jules, I want to bounce out of bed in the morning as well? What sort of suggestions do you have for people?
Okay. So the first one, I think, is to have a positive mindset. And I know that is it's a phrase that is bandied around everywhere. And I think we all know intellectually that to be positive is a good thing. But I do actually think that's a skill that you can learn, and that you have to teach yourself to see the positive side of everything. And I have managed to do that over time, like to an annoying degree, I am sure, for anyone around me. It's like I don't know whether, do you remember, Michele, the Pollyanna story? But Pollyanna was a girl in the, okay, so it was a book for, I think it was probably out of the 60s or 70s. But Pollyanna was a girl who always saw the positive side of everything. So, you know, whatever happened in life, she'd see the positive. And I think that you can teach yourself to be like that. And I think I've taught myself to be like that. And I try and see the positive in people as well, which is maybe good and bad. I think there's a bit of naivety there in that immediate kind of trust that you have with people. But anyway, so my main tip in terms of creating a mindset for success is to try and see the positive in everything and stay a positive person, which does a lot of things. One is people want to be around you because you are always positive. The second thing is that
But before you kind of roll on into
yeah.
the rest of the lolly shop full of all these fabulous elements. So one of the things that when talking to people about mindset, I do try to unwrap, if you like, the difference between positive mindset and positive focus.
Right.
Because sometimes what I can find is that if you're saying to people about having a positive mindset, then if they are feeling bad or upset about something, they can start some negative self-talk because they feel like they should be constantly positive. Whereas a positive focus is more around having that idea that things are going to be fine, everything's going to work out, and this is going to be for my betterment, and this is going to work out well for me. I just can't see it in this moment. I've just been fired,
Yep.
I've just this, I've just that. So the positive focus is knowing, in a sense, that things will work out.
Yes.
As opposed to in that moment when you're feeling like your world has ended because you've just been made redundant or whatever, beating yourself up that you're not feeling positive in that moment that you've just been made.
No, obviously, so you're right, absolutely right. It's about a positive focus. Having said that, even and I think the thing that comes out of it, which I was about to say, is resilience, because it does teach you how to bounce back. And I have had some terrible things happen to me in my business life where, excuse me, you would think that I might not be able to recover from it, but you do. And you do kind of have to pull up your socks and get on with it a little bit, I think. Look, I have a theory that the last time something really awful happened to me was that I was in the middle, I'd sold my house, I was building my PR SaaS platform, which is software as a service. It's quite an expensive thing to do, so I'd taken the money from the house to back myself. I did it with another guy that promised me the world, and halfway through the build, he walked away. And he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And we had no money left, and I had no idea how to progress a half-built technology platform. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? So what I do in those instances is freeze first. I always go, I don't even know what to do. And then I think about it. And then in order to sort of keep going, you've got to try and find the positive in it. And in the end, and this has happened to me a few times, I went, well, it's now mine. I can do with it what I want. So, sometimes it's hard to find the positive in everything, but there's kind of always a way that you can do it. I had a couple of little stories I was going to tell if you like. Would you like me to pull me? But if I'm talking, slow me back down.
No, that's great. I just want to reflect for a moment though on that story, because again, you shared something that would have been at the time really quite terrifying. In that moment,
yeah.
You would have been my house, my world, my SaaS. I've got to put the kids on the street and sell one of them. All of these really scary things that you would have gone through at the time. And so I really just want to recognize that as I was kind of leaning into, is it positive mindset or positive focus, you brought in that beautiful element of resilience into the conversation around how, well, it's even when things aren't going very well, perhaps sometimes you do need to go, well, it's not just having a focus. I need to turn this into a positive mindset.
Yeah.
And that wonderful example you used of, well, at the end of the day, it might have been a shitty, terrible time, but I now control the product that we've come out with. I now control the SLS. further handle your own PR, and you had control then of how you could grow and build the successful business that you then built.
Yes.
Although at the time it would have been super scary, super everything.
Oh,
but that resilience, I really just wanted to flag in there that sometimes whether you're talking about mindsets or focus or whatever way you look at it, it can come back to just, you know, in those moments, how do you then pick yourself up
yes,
and keep
absolutely.
going?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so do you feel like it's something that similar to what I was asking about before, you know, you kind of, when you were 23 and setting up the design business, you built some of those habits and beliefs and ways of dealing with life. Do you think that prior to all of that happening, you'd also had like many little cliffs?
Yes,
I think
disasters.
I was trying to think of a not so negative word like challenge or disaster, but you'd had little mini disasters that had helped you to kind of go, this is a disaster, but I know I can get through it because I got through these other ones up until that point.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think that you can often look back with a bit of perspective later. So this is now for me, when we're talking about creating the SaaS platform, that was 2017. I can now look back and go, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it opened up other doors and made me to go in a different direction. At the time, it felt like, you know, I felt like Chicken Little and the sky was falling in. It was terrible, but and what I allow myself to do, and when I see other people go through it, I say, look, we all need time to sort of cry on the sofa and lick our wounds, but I only give myself a few days. And I always say, whatever day of the week it is, on Monday, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to start keeping on, keep going. But you are allowed to have a few days of self-pity, but I don't give myself very long.
A friend of mine many years ago, and I always thought it was a funny expression, but she would talk about it as being a pity party.
Yes.
It was similar kind of idea.
Exactly.
That you're allowed to, and I think it's actually a bit more empowering to say, okay, I'm allowed to have a pity party now because it's going to finish at this point.
Yeah.
Rather than, again, having that, you know, some of the self-talk or the positivity people out there might say, no, it's a positive mindset 24/7. I think what we're talking about is that, you know, recognizing that your emotions at those points in time are very real, being with them, but not staying in them. That's the key there.
You really kind of need to gather your thoughts, you know, that expression, and just kind of sit with what's happened, acknowledge it, understand it, process it, and then start thinking as fast as you can of a way to get out of that situation.
And I can even hear from that, you know, when you were describing very quickly earlier about the ticker TV, and, you know, you went to do one, you ended up with a show, you did this, you did that, and I can see how that resilience from, you know, the different little things and the bigger things like your partner walking away helped to kind of keep that focus on, well, what can I do? What can I do? What's the opportunities here?
That's right. Yeah, I always like to. I always have one eye on the horizon. People say live here, be here now, and live in the present, and I do to an extent, but I very much have my eye on the future all the time as well. It's probably not ideal, but that's kind of the way that I roll anyway.
Well, what's ideal for you is different to what's ideal for other people, but I like the when you talk about bouncing out of the bed in the morning. Is it correct in my seeing that part of that is that by keeping your eye on the future and where it's going, you're kind of motivated because you're building those steps to get there.
Yes, totally. That's hit the nail on the head there, Michelle.
Fabulous. Well, Jules, I just also wanted to pick up around this word optimist and optimism and opportunities that when you're talking, and you reminded me so much of Jim Carrey's Yes movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
For that whole just saying yes leads you down. You don't know where it's going to go, but it opens up all of these other opportunities. And what do you think when you're seeing people that may not be as full of the joy of life, or they just say yes to everything as yourself? How can they perhaps even lean into it a little way? What would you suggest there?
What I often say to people in those situations is, what is the worst thing that can happen to you? I always my way of getting around it, and I don't know whether this works for everyone, but I nearly always will say, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you give it a go and it doesn't work, then you're going to be back where you are now, and you can go and get a job, or you can go and do whatever it was you were thinking of doing. But why not at least give yourself the opportunity or the chance of trying something different that might work? So so I always try and think that the worst thing that can happen is not really that bad anyway, so why don't I give it a go, I guess, is kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I can see that and hear that with the so I set up this and then I set up that and I set up and it's like, well, if one of them fails, so what? You've set up all of these other ones, and it's that wonderful excitement and enthusiasm that comes across as you're speaking.
Thank you.
Of Well, it is very infectious, and I think people watching and picking up on that, I want to encourage them, because within that is the trying out different things.
Yes.
So you might go, oh, okay, I want to go and try. I said yes to this, so I'm going to go and try it. It's not just trying that; it's saying yes to 10 other things, because you might find that first one isn't necessarily for you, but
No.
you've tried it and you've given it a go. I discovered a few years ago when I said yes to aerial yoga, that aerial yoga
Wow.
is not for me.
Right.
It was for the 14-year-old and 15-year-old instructors that I had in the class. But my graduation certificate to myself was doing downward dog in the parachute that you use in aerial yoga.
Wow.
Because I was so uncomfortable. It was painful. It was uncoordinated. It wasn't anything beautiful like you see when they advertise.
I would have been.
I just worked within my body shape and my whatever, being completely different to everybody else in the class, and went, what do I want to do? And I've got the photo to prove it. And I look at it now and go, well, I tried it, and I can say, like pole dancing, it's not for me.
No, but you gave it a go. That's I think the most, and you probably still have days where you look at that photo and go, I can't believe I did that.
I do. I definitely have days where I look at it and go, I really can't believe I did that. When I look at everybody in the class. But does that mean it would stop me again? No, because I think, like we're talking about, it's giving things a go.
Yeah.
Even if I can't begin to tell you how uncomfortable I was in that class.
I can imagine, actually. It's something that I would probably not be able to do either, but I'm really impressed that you gave it a go.
Well, and Jules, I think that this is the key that I'm hearing here today. And I know that people watching, picking up your enthusiasm and energy and joy to be, what's the best way for them to get hold of you after today?
Michele, I'm all over LinkedIn. I love it. So it's just Jules Brooke on LinkedIn. You'll see the woman with the pink hair. That's me. And I'm on, in fact, somebody said to me today, how often are you supposed to post on LinkedIn? And I said, well, I probably do it 3 or 4 times a day. So I am always on it.
Oh, fabulous. So yes, look up Jules Brooke, or She's the Boss on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And Jules, if someone was to ask you, with such a at the right time, the right place, I can just see you on Chapel Street going to those launches in the 80s with the power suit and the shoulder pads and the big hair. I had big brown curly hair back then.
Yes.
So
lots of hairspray.
Lots of hairspray. If there was something that you were to say to your younger self, or advice that you might give, what might that be?
It would be persevere, because it's going to be worth it in the end. That I think perseverance is important. It's like resilience, and also take opportunities when they arise. Like, learn to recognize when someone's giving you an opportunity and take it. You can always say no later.
Wonderful. I think that is so true. You know, saying yes to opportunities and being open to opportunities. And I would also add in there, as women, especially when we're younger women, so younger women watching.
Like us.
Like us. We are young.
Yes.
We're very young. But also what I was going to say, or whatever age you might be, is to let people know that you're open to opportunities, because what I was meaning was sometimes women can sort of sit back and wait for them.
Yes.
And one of the things that we work with clients doing is very much around that, telling the universe. So I'm glad that you're telling your younger self to take the opportunities and to persevere, and wonderful, wonderful piece of advice again.
Thank you, Michele.
So Jules, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, my absolute pleasure. I've loved it. God, it went in like that whisk of an yeah, very fast.
It went very fast, and for those those watching, we actually had quite a lot more to talk about, but it just shows that with the depth of expertise, and it was such an honor having you again on the show today, Jules.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. I hope people find it fun and interesting.
And to all the viewers, thank you for watching again, and for your emails and messages and correspondence around how much you love getting these tips and seeing the different stories from the different guests about how they have implemented success into their lives. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.